Hello, everyone. My name is James.
And I'm Ron.
And we're here to bring you a brand new podcast called 10 Backward.
See, and it's an interesting title because I have absolutely no idea what it means. And I'm sure the people at home are maybe kind of curious about what the hell is going on here.
They might be, and if they are, thank God they're listening to this podcast because we're going to tell them right now. 10 Backward is a podcast about watching Star Trek The Next Generation, but not as normal people do. Would you like to explain a little further on?
Well, I guess the idea is that we're going to start where everything stopped. We're going to start with the 7th season, and we're going to watch the entire series backwards, which might sound a little like kind of disconnected and kind of jarring, but maybe that's the idea. Maybe it'll be a unique take on where we're going with the series, because you and I, we've got a good knowledge of Next Gen, both being fans, but at the same time, watching it backwards, maybe that'll give us a new perspective, or at least it'll give us like some very confused things because we're going to see the end of storylines before we see the beginning. So what do you think the inspiration was for us to do this, as if I don't already know?
Well, for me personally, is I used to watch Star Trek when I was a kid. The Next Generation was huge in my house, and I haven't ever watched the 7th season. It's kind of a weird thing, and I think for me personally, it would be interesting to see how the show devolves.
Yes,
and
I
see
agree.
like just you know, with all good things going all the way back to the trial of humanity. I think we're in store for some interesting theories.
Yeah, it'll be kind of nice to watch the series be bookended here at the very beginning. But for
Yeah.
me, what drew me to the idea of doing this podcast is I wanted to do a Star Trek The Next Generation viewing project with you, but the idea of sitting down and watching Encounter at Farpoint was completely repellent to me. So it made more sense to start at the ass end of the series and work backwards, because by the time we get to season 2, who knows? We might have both totally lost interest in this, but I'm really hoping that we can power through and do it. But
I know it's gonna be a fun project.
Yeah, we've got several months to work on this, so maybe we can power through and do this. I am sure that after the 2 or 3 minutes we've been talking here, sure we've got all of our friends and mom and dad and the guy that we're really good friends with at the coffee shop listening. But James, who the hell are you, and why should anybody care that you're watching Star Trek The Next Generation?
That's a very good question, and I'm going to follow that up with a very good answer. Well, I've always been a fan of Star Trek and space fact and space fiction, or I guess, what is that called? You have space fantasy and space fantasy and space fantasy and space fiction, because I consider Star Trek to be more of space fiction than space fantasy. Or sci-fi. Sorry, what am I saying space fantasy for? It's a science fiction and science fantasy. So I'm a big fan of Star Trek as science fiction and not science fantasy. And it really draws on like where we could go as a group of people. And as a person who watched it from a very young age, it's always been something that I remember watching it and just being in awe, like, could this really be our future? Could this really be something that is achievable by mankind? And just being able to relive some of those memories are why I want to do this. And I hope people, like, and you asked, why would people want to be interested in watching me do this or listening to me do this?
I was going to say, this is not a visual medium. This is purely oral in focus.
Yeah, and mainly because I hope they discover how much they love Star Trek all over again, just like I have.
I hope people are going to come along with us on this journey.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a huge time investment. We've kind of committed that we want these episodes of the podcast to be no longer than an episode.
Yeah.
So that way that we're not stressing people's patience. It might even be something you could listen to along with an episode. Who knows? Depends on when you jump on the series. Everything's going to be old at some point in the future. So I wouldn't beat yourself up. You might even be able to spin forward to just listen to a specific episode that you want to see or listen to us talk about and kind of theorize on. Again, I just hope that people are going to enjoy the ride.
Yeah, and what about you, Ron? What about you? What the why and the what for Ron?
Oh, I'm a nobody. But I do like Star Trek. I'm in the basement of a house right now, so I think that's kind of the combination of two things make me an expert.
Oh my God, Ron,
to talk about this.
Ron, I am also in the basement of a house right now.
See, this is why Team Ron James is going the long haul on this. So, all right. So we got the who are we. We've got some fandom background. We've explained the premise. We've talked about the what and the why. Where does 10 backward come into play on this? Is this a reference to something potentially?
Oh, I hope so. Yeah, well, 10 forward is the bar that they have in on the Star Trek Enterprise, and because 10 forward is, of course, a reference to I'm guessing warp 10 possibly, but
no, it's deck 10 forward.
Yeah, deck 10 forward. I'm joking because I know in All Good Things, as we will get to, they get to warp 13 eventually.
Oh, it's true.
So,
one potential future, which also somehow has Geordi marrying Leah Brahms. We'll get into that here in just a minute.
No, totally. But 10 backward, it's a basic, simple, little play on the word for the bar. That we're, instead of going forward, we are watching everything backwards. So our bar is upside down and reversed.
I love it.
And it's Guinan is on the ceiling trying to serve drinks. The drinks keep falling out.
Yeah. I just, because I was one of those things. It's like 10 backward probably makes better sense than the poop deck. I just, that's not going to get the right type of listenership.
Or like aft backwards.
Outside of Germany.
Yeah, that's very true.
So that's fine. But anyway, so we got all the business side of things out of the way. How do people contact us? What if I said, you guys, you suck and I hate you and you forever sullied Star Trek in my mind. Could I send you guys an email? Are you
of course.
Are you on the Twitters?
We are on the emails. We're at 10 backward. That's 10 backward at gmail.com. And if you want to contact me, I'm on Twitter it's at Spleenball, SPLEENBALL.
And I've never been able to crack that Twitter game, but I am at Tyrantulus, like Tyrant Ulus. So hopefully that we have made it easy for people to send us hate mail. Do you want to jump into maybe talking about our first episode here? Since we are kind of starting at the end and moving backwards, what is the episode that we just watched?
We watched All Good Things, and it was both parts 1 and 2. So for anyone listening, we're watching it off of Netflix, and if Netflix lumps the parts together, we watch that all as one instead of breaking it up.
That's good, because I could see watching Best of Both Worlds kind of as two chunks, but the later in the series, it's tougher, and I know for a fact that they put more and more of that stuff stitched together. So it's going to be tough, but probably just for people's sanity, where I'm not watching a two-parter, and it's like, oh man, I watched the third reel of the film, and I have no idea what the setup was. So you won't be completely disjointed from that initial experience of watching things, but bigger. This is about a bigger sort of confusing thing rather than a smaller confusing thing.
And if we're talking about confusing things, All Good Things is it uses a very fun and never boring time jumping aspect. That's one thing that I think, of course you're in space. It's time is always something nebulous when you go into something in space, but to use it as like a tool that heavily so often.
Well, it's such a popular trope in the Star Trek universe where you've got something is happening, only I know that it's happening, and I just need everybody else to get on board that this crazy, insane bullshit that I'm trying to lay down on you is factual, and just take it at face value and just trust me, and I'm going to blow up the Enterprise or whatever, or I'm going to shoot Data out the torpedo bay, but trust me, it's for the good of mankind.
Yeah, and so it starts with Counselor Troy and Worf coming out of the what is that? The
hollow shed.
For some reason I'm having a horrible time thinking of everything. The holodeck, and
we'll get better with the nomenclature of the series as time goes on.
Well, I don't know. This one kind of blew my mind as far as things that they just throw out there, And seeing Worf and Troy on a date was weird.
Okay, well, and again,
Right
since
out
you
the box.
haven't seen season 7, there's a lot of build-up that gets to this.
Okay.
That we won't go into just yet. But the writer of this episode is it's co-written by Ronald D. Moore, who writes quite a bit in the later series, and then I'm gonna say his name wrong, but it's like Brandon Braga, or it could be Braga. I don't know. I'm not his uncle.
I'm sure he's listening to this right now, going, "Fuck that wrong guy."
I know, he's like, that's gonna be our first hate mail. But he also wrote the initial episode that kind of kicked off this thing, which is a real goofy sort of idea anyway, that you're going to put Worf and Troy together after you just spent like 6.5 seasons selling the idea that Riker and Troy were going to get together or something.
Well, and that's why it hit me so hard, because in season 6 they do a lot of Troy and Riker lip service, especially when you start looking at the movies.
Yeah.
On top of that, later you're like, whoa, this is weird. When the fuck did this happen?
Yeah, it's strange, and that's why it wasn't super fan popular. So and why they made a point in those movies to kind of correct this little error of the series.
Yeah.
So, but you were saying they come off the holodeck. They just got done on a date. They're about to make a little smoochy smooch.
And then out of nowhere comes Captain Picard.
Here comes Grandpa in a night
robe.
He
just runs out and he's like, Worf, what day is it?
Yeah, I know.
And
it's Christmas Day, Mr. Scrooge.
Yeah, I was actually thinking of that. Like, oh, here's your fatted goose. And no, he says the date, and he's like, oh, yeah, I didn't miss it. And he says, I've been in 3 different timelines, and he tries to explain what's going on. And in this episode, you start seeing all the jumps. Obviously, you go to when Picard first showed up on the Enterprise. You show, like, as we're watching it, level, and then later when Picard is incredibly old and almost like he's near dead practically.
Yes, nearly dead Dumbledore.
Nearly dead Dumbledore.
He But the teaser, that wraps up the teaser, where it's kind of like, oh, what day is it, and what are we gonna do, and so something.
It's a beautiful cold open.
Yeah, it's a great. The teaser, it's really good for this because it completely sets up the disappointment to come later. But then we cut to Picard. He's in Troy's quarters. They're kind of talking. He's trying to explain. He's like, I was somewhere and I was talking to somebody, and it's like somebody trying to explain a fever dream, and it's like, I was eating pudding with Pee Wee Herman, but then
it's like 2 guys watching this stuff backwards trying to explain it all.
Yes, exactly. It would be like having no knowledge of Star Trek and trying to be like suss out what these people's relationship is.
Exactly.
But he's talking about, I was tying something, or I was doing something with my hands, and I was speaking to somebody, and I didn't know what was going on, and so at that point he starts jumping, and he jumps to the future, and you see old man Picard with his Santa beard at like on Earth at their winery in France, which again, that's more knowledge of. You'll see that episode
of Picard later.
You get to see Picard and his brother later.
And then Neil deGrasse Tyson, Geordi LaForge walks up.
Yes, and he starts like giving him the biz about like the warp core and the phase inducers and something's broke.
Yeah.
And Picard wasn't having any of that.
He's trying to tell everybody, I'm jumping in different. The only people he doesn't tell though is from the past,
right?
Because he doesn't want to mess up the space-time continuum.
Yeah, he makes it a point that he doesn't want to feed these guys information in case this stuff carries forward. But
yeah,
I think he figures out at some point that it doesn't really matter because they're 3 separate sort of things going on.
It's an identical timeline, but 3 of them.
So he convinces Geordi that they need to go see Data because. But hold on, we're missing one thing, and the thing that we're missing is that they had talked about him being diagnosed with medical babble disease that affects your memory.
It's space Alzheimer's, pretty much.
It's a callback to the episode when Riker got hit by space spores, and you'll just lose a bunch of your memory at some point in the future, conveniently for plot reasons. So, but he's got some kind of brain defect, so that way that you start having like an Alzheimer's kind of reaction type thing. And so he convinces Geordi that this is not the disease, that this is something that's really happening. He's disconnected in time and he's bouncing around. So they want to go see Data, and Data,
he's at
yes,
Cambridge.
He's at Cambridge, and not just Cambridge, but like a matte painting of Cambridge with some future shit in the background, future buildings. And then maybe on the Netflix release, I don't know if this is on the Blu-ray, but a little floating car goes by. And that was weird. It really just kind of seems very out of place for an establishing shot.
I want to say this episode had some horrible composites. There's some horrible composite work in this episode.
There's some very strange composite shots. I will agree with you. But the car,
and
it very much is a Luke and Obi-Wan and the bots coming into Mos Eisley kind of moment.
They rub some
Vaseline.
They rub some Vaseline on the lens.
On Geordi's eyeballs and send him in there.
And you have Data, who they make no mention of this because I don't think they ever in season 7 they don't ever put the emotion chip in Data, do they?
I don't want to ruin anything for you, but again, this TV show is 30 years old, so
but
yes,
again, I know it's my own fault, but yes,
times where it's on again, off again with the emotion chip stuff, and towards the end he experiments with it. So they've set it up that because there's a whole thing about Noonien Soong, who's the guy that developed lore and Data in B4. If you care for that movie.
Yeah.
So there's the emotion chip and stuff. So it's out there in the universe. So you take it as read that at some point he's perfected being able to use it because Data kind of shows a little bit of emotion. It's like more of its bemusement. I think it's set on bemusement.
Yeah, he's like, oh, she makes me laugh.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, what the hell are you doing, Brent Spiner?
What type of tea do you want, governor? And it's, okay.
Oh, Earl Grey, hot. Well, of course it's hot. It's tea.
So...
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody.
They recycle the set from number 10.
Yeah.
Or not 10 Downing Street. Yeah.
Number 10.
Or whatever.
But yeah, it is 10 Downing Street, isn't it?
That's where the British Prime Minister lives. It's
that is right. Baker that's right. Street. He's sitting on the couch.
220 Baker Street.
That's right.
Baker Street. Anyway, more hate mail.
210 Baker. But yeah.
From all the Sherlock Holmes people. But
like, how dare you?
So he's living in Isaac Newton's old house. They make a point.
Oh, and Data has a gray streak in his hair now. And they make a whole point to ask him about it, like, what's up with that guy? And the maid's like, he looks like a skunk. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, well, it's distinctive. And I'm like, yeah, you're just making me look at it more.
I like how the house is full of cats, too. So there's, cats on the mantle. There's cats on the tea cart.
Well, Data just loves cats.
Actually, he's just a big fan of toxoplasmosis, but they don't really get into that on the series too much. So they talk to Data. What do they talk to Data about? It's about his brain issue and how he's going through time.
Yeah.
And Data's like no help.
And Data's kind of turned into almost like he's turned into almost like a fop. Like, oh, whatever.
Yeah, he's kind of like,
sorry you're experiencing this. We don't really, I'm at Cambridge.
He's like, well, I can't disprove what you're saying, so let's just go on an adventure. And he calls out to the lady, just have some GA go ahead and do my classes for the next week.
It's going to take about a week, I think. It's like, oh, it's great that you care so much about your students.
I'm just saying, I'm getting on Rate My Professor tonight, and I'm giving that calculator an F.
And so they leave Cambridge.
No, but he's bouncing in time a little bit now too.
He keeps bouncing,
and the best
then he goes back
to bounce happens. That he goes back to like when he first went to the original Enterprise. When he first went to the D.
That's right.
But who does he see in the shuttle?
Oh, yeah. This blew my mind. Tasha Yar. Yeah, she came back for this one, and I did like that they pulled out the old outfits too, the ones that they had to stop using.
And you know why they had to stop using them, right?
They were like, it was cutting off circulation.
And they stunk because I guess they just held on to all the bacteria, and different extras would use different suits, and I guess it was just like a really it was like a Disneyland level of stank. So they
like swamp monsters.
So they got rid of those. Gross. But I guess Patrick Stewart had back problems because it was so tight, or whatever that fabric's called.
It's like not spandex, but it was
lycra
like
or something.
weird.
But more hate mail.
Yeah.
So so he sees Tasha Yar and gets off there. And actually, there's another kind of a cool thing that they did here as well, because season 5 for Next Gen is when DS9 started, and Cole Meany left, or what's his face?
Cole Meany. It's
more hate mail.
We're gonna call him Irish guy.
No, it's Miles O'Brien. Chief O'Brien.
Miles
so
O'Brien.
So
Miles
they
O'Brien.
moved him over to the other series. But what they did is they stuck him in all the LeVar Burton, all the Geordie stuff for this, just so you could kind of bring him back and have him be part of this season finale kind of thing. Because he was one of the more popular elements, kind of the fringe popular, the B team all-stars of Next Gen.
You liked Cole Meany. You liked Miles O'Brien. You did not like Keiko.
You love that movie The Van, where he just curses straight for 2 hours. So you're like, bring him back for the finale.
I did, Cole Meany. I mean, I remember being like younger and watching him on movies wasn't he on like Under Siege? He was on some of those really bad action-y movies.
Tons of, and you're like those little action Seagal kind of movies,
like and then he shows up and I'm like, Miles O'Brien, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be back like making sure something engineering's working?
Like change some isolinear chips or something. So but that kind of brings us up to the second act, where they're getting kind of trying to figure out like if there's a medical reason, if it's not really time jumps, if it's really like a medical thing that's going on. Picard has a couple of outbursts where he thinks Q's behind it and he's yelling for Q, and
he's like, I'm gonna go to my ready room.
So but he gets Dr. Crusher involved. Is like they're scanning him and they're like, oh my gosh, like he has one of those little Montclair moments, and and they scan his brain and they're like, oh my gosh, you've got 2 minutes of new memories in the span of like 5 seconds or something. So he's trying to figure out what they're going to do about it. And there's Nurse Ogawa, who is pregnant. They make a whole Chekhov's gun, because she comes in and rubs her big old belly to let you...
There's a lot of foreshadowing.
Yes, rubs her
later.
Rubs her big old belly, so there's a baby in there. And they do all this stuff, and then he takes a message, because they're down there in the sick bay, and he takes a letter, or not a letter, but he takes a transmission from Starfleet headquarters from Admiral Nakamura, who you see occasionally throughout the series. He's kind of one of my favorite admirals, because they bring him back a lot. I guess they just liked him. But he says, hey, you guys need to hotfoot it over there to the neutral zone in the Devron system, because there's a spatial anomaly we need you to check out. So that's like, okay, maybe we're on the path to figuring out exactly what's going on. But of course it's the neutral zone, so it's like, can we go into the neutral zone? And they're like, but don't be a dick. So go up to the border and see what's going on.
Just elbow your way in.
Yeah,
You're
just,
cool, man.
Show them your hall pass. You'll be fine. So so at this point, time travels again, trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Now,
he's back in old, isn't he? He's back in old
it's old
Picard.
It's Grandpa Picard again. And they're like, hey, you need to go to the hospital and figure out what's going on. So
he's like, no.
So they take him to see Beverly Crusher in the future, who's
who's captain. Yeah, it's the USS Pastor.
Yes, the El Pastor, which the most delicious ship in the fleet. But no, she's flying one of those weird ships that just looks like a globe. with some
two things hanging off the
side
of it.
It's a medical
and
ship.
It's funny because they do this whole thing of they got married, and she's now the captain of this ship, and so he kind of challenges her on that and is like, we need to go to the place in the neutral system. We can't go. Wait, hold on. I know someone we can call. Let's call... Well, no, before that, he tries to contact Riker, and Riker shuts him down.
Because he's an admiral now, and he's like all by the book, unlike the Riker we've seen through the whole series, which kind of plays it fast and loose. Is like a Kirk. He's all...
I have a theory. I have a theory about why he plays everything by the book, by the way. Well,
he was in the script.
To that later.
That's got part to do with it. But okay,
maybe. Well, yeah, I mean, but I'm saying like character-wise. Then after he says no, that's when Picard is like, "Oh wait, let's go. I know someone else who might be able to lend a hand." They go to the USS Pastor and they meet up with Beverly.
Beverly Wright.
And then,
Beverly Picard.
No.
Yeah, sorry.
Beverly
Who
Picard.
knows? Actually, it's
so,
possible she married him first and then married him. Maybe that's why there's so much tension. They don't get into it in the show. Who knows?
And then, so they say, hey, why don't we try contacting Worf? Because apparently in this future, Klingons have kind of taken over that area.
Oh, yeah, because they took over they beat the Romulans, and then now we're kind of at odds with the Klingons.
With the Klingons for whatever reason, but it's to build it's to build tension where there is none.
I think it's to bring in the characters that we haven't found a way to shoehorn into the series finale yet.
And that, of course, was Worf. And so Worf is a governor of some kind. He's not really on the council, and they Picard kind of guilts him into saying you can cross into the neutral zone, and
guilt trips him into letting him go, but only if he can come with us.
Yeah, so they transport Worf onto the USS Pastor, and they go on to the neutral zone to go towards this area where the anomaly is supposed to be.
So they get out there, and do they find anything?
Yeah, it jumps again.
Oh yeah,
before they find nothing, and it jumps back to the first Picard, the early Picard, and they see that temporal anomaly there. They get there and they see it, and they're like, crap, we don't even know what the hell this is. And then they jump to the forward, then middle Picard sees it, and then they jump one more time, and then late Picard sees it, but there's nothing there for late Picard to see, and he's trying to figure out why there's nothing there. There has to be a temporal anomaly
so
there.
To clarify, I've seen it, but for our listeners at home, Picard, first season Picard, basically, is like, he sees it, and it's huge, and then contemporary Picard kind of sees it, and it's smaller.
It's smaller.
And then Picard in the future, the 25 years in the future, there's nothing there at all.
Nothing there. So doesn't Q actually show up at this point?
Yeah, I think that by this point, there's been at least one little Q popping in, and it's not just Q paying a social call. It's a kind of a homage back to Encounter at Farpoint, where he's the judge at the trial, and he's like, I can't tell you exactly what you've got to do to fix your problem, but you caused it. You caused this problem, and only you can fix it. And humanity is still on trial from Encounter at Farpoint. The trial never ended. We've been watching you this whole time. And I guess the Q Continuum decided to give him a challenge. One more challenge to sort of see if mankind was worthy of,
as Q always does,
being part of, I guess, the galactic neighborhood.
Yeah, and they bring back the whole trial with all the French peasants hanging out.
There'll be
yelling
a
at everybody.
That looks like Harvey Dent, where it's just half the face is melted off. It'll be, it's like they just went down to the sideshow and just collected some people and said, hey, we'll pay you scale. All you got to do, just wear what you got on. Just come on over.
Well, and to go back a little bit, Picard thinks he's seeing things because he starts seeing all the peasants in front of him doing yelling at him, and
I'm gonna get the time wrong, but it's the 23rd century people, they were part of all those tribes.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. And so they go back. They go to the when Picard first shows up on the Enterprise, and he freaks out and he calls red alert, and because he's like, I know where I am. I want to make sure that Q's not here. And so the Q tells him, you guys did this. You need to fix this. And then Picard asks him, are you the one who's making me jump timelines? And Q says, yeah.
Because you can ask me 10 questions, but they got to be yes/no questions.
Why? That's not a yes or no question.
You forfeit all your... Nope, you passed a a graveyard on your side of the car. You lose all your cows. Sorry.
Oh, oh, God. Stupid game. It's the worst game ever. And so they figure out, okay, we have this temporal anomaly. Now we need to figure out what it is.
So future Picard and gang
Picard and gang
are parked out there at the neutral zone, trying to figure out what's going on. Some Klingons roll up on them and start shooting. They don't even ask questions. They just start shooting.
Yeah.
So,
and before they start shooting, Picard figures out. Well, actually, it's not Picard. It's Data. He talks about, our scanners aren't picking up anything, but we need to figure out if it's subspace. So let's do this whole thing with a tachyon pulse. And so so they're like, it's going to take 14 hours. We'll stay 6 hours. we'll see what happens. And if we're not done in 6 hours, we get out of here because we got some Klingons incoming. And they income, they shoot, and they're like, well, we got to get out of here. We got to go to warp 13, get out of here. But they're like, oh, warp's down. So these ships keep coming in, they keep attacking, and that's when out of nowhere comes the Enterprise. It's
with an extra nacelle.
With an extra nacelle on the
for
top.
extra warping.
So they pretty much just manhandle all the Klingon ships that are there, and they beam the crew of the USS Pasteur on board because it's a wreck and it explodes. They had to dump the warp core, and then it jumps back to the past again.
So now you've got first season Picard, contemporary Picard. They're doing their little tachyon pulse, trying to probe in to see what is going on with this anomaly. Well, Q says, "Here, I got some stuff to show you. Let's go on a side quest here." Takes him back to Earth, sort of ancient.
Like it's like, what did he say? 1.3 billion years ago.
It's Earth's like earliest days, and so.
This scene made me laugh.
I know.
So hard.
It's got some weird.
Well, not just that, but the fact that Q is like, look over there, Picard, and they point down, and I'm like, oh, it's primordial sludge. This is where you began. Not you, but you as a planet. And then he reaches his hand, and it's. I'm like, oh,
see,
God.
The anomaly is huge, though. It's basically like 80% of the Alpha Quadrant at this point, or something. And there's Earth kind of right at the doorstep of this anomaly. And Q's like looking down in the sludge and reaches his hand down in there, and it's Caro syrup. And he's like, look, there's the first two proteins are going to coalesce first two amino acids are going to coalesce and make a protein. Watch. Oh, they didn't do it. Oh, well, there goes humanity.
Now you've got to fix this, Picard.
We also forgot to mention that there's a scene in the future where they talk about people's scars and stuff. Sort of.
Oh,
There's a proximity
it was the mid.
To this.
It was the mid. It was the contemporary Picard. And so because they throw the tachyon pulse into the anomaly, and Geordi's eyesight starts to heal. Like his eyes start to heal themselves. And the pregnant what was she was a nurse, right?
Yeah. And she miscarried because
she miscarried because the baby started shrinking back to an egg.
It started devolving basically. So, so they were like, they upped us, about 15 years early. So we got upped on an episode of Next Gen. And so they're like, well, how do I fix this? And he's like, again, you got to work it out. You caused it. You'll figure out what's going on.
Seriously, Picard, I can't keep giving you the answers.
So Picard's back in the future, and now they're getting away from where the Pasteur blew up, and now, hey, the anomaly just formed. So they're probing it in the past.
Yeah.
They're probing it in what would be the present, and then they start probing it in the future. And I think that's about the point where Picard Scooby-Doo's it and figures out that it's like, wait a minute, it's feeding off the rays.
Yeah, the tachyon pulses in subspace
it's
started
traveling
a time
backwards
rip.
in time.
Oh no,
we
shouldn't
should
have
never
played God.
Have God's lo mein. So they
seriously.
decide that they're going to go ahead and turn off the beams, but they're turning off the beams, but it's still getting bigger anyway. So
it's still getting bigger.
They've got a great
idea,
and it's great because Picard gets to be like a smartass because Data figures out something in the past or the present, and then he is like the messenger boy because he'll leap and he'll be like, oh, all you got to do is set up a warp shell, and they're like, what?
Yeah, actually, Picard and Data say it at the same time. Oh, yes, sir, that's right. His warp shell. Okay, perfect.
Very few instances of Jinx padlock in the Next Gen canon. So, so they build the warp shell, and I guess because of their proximity to each other in this temporal anomaly, you now see three. Oh yeah,
you see the three,
the season 1E,
the three Enterprises,
the kind of contemporary Enterprise, and an Enterprise with the extra nacelle. And they're all giving it all they got, Captain, and more power to the engines, and then they start blowing up.
The future Enterprise, kabloom. the first Enterprise goes away, kaboom, and the last one left is of course your contemporary Enterprise, and it's kind of weird because they don't really they have they're pretty much going through the same thing, because the first Enterprise and the future Enterprise both were like, oh, we're losing containment on the warp core, it's gonna blow, and it does, and Geordi's saying the exact same thing, oh, we're losing our control on the warp core, it's gonna blow, and then boom, a flash of light happens and the anomaly's gone, and Picard is in the middle of that trial area just out of nowhere. Like, it kind of it feels like they wrote themselves into a corner. Like, how are we going to get this back? Like, oh, it looks like they're going to blow up too. Nope. Flash, it's gone, and they're back to the courtroom.
Act 7
from Farpoint.
They are it feels
Are you
like
sure it's not Act 13?
It's probably like Act 50 by now. You're right. So, but they're at the courtroom, and Picard is kind of like, okay, we gotta bookend this. So how do we do it? And basically Q's like, I gave you some hints, and because I like you, and you're just, but humanity will always be on trial, and so we're just gonna keep an eye out on you, and maybe we'll see each other again in the future. So he sends Picard back to the Enterprise exactly at the moment where he came up and cock-blocked Worf. So he runs out there,
Worf,
and he says, oh, the 3 timelines, they did it all in one night.
What day is it?
So,
yeah.
so I know, he does.
He's like,
well, I guess I'll go back to bed.
He's like,
so he goes back to
God.
bed. And then it cuts to a kind of a classic scene.
The senior officers.
Is Riker's quarters, and you see your bridge staff. You see Riker and Worf and Crusher and Data and LaForge, all at their weekly poker game, and they're sitting there playing. And this is some fan service, because they brought back that skin tight jumper that Marina Sirtis always used to wear.
Yeah.
So she's there wearing that, and there's a knock at the door. And who is it?
It's Picard. And why would he come and want to play the game with us?
And he's like, do you want a deal? And everybody's really chummy, and they're like, you were always welcome to come to these games.
Oh no, and he specifically says, I should have done this a long time ago.
He says, 5-card stud, nothing wild, and the sky's the limit. 3rd star to the right, and straight on till morning.
It's not a bad way to end a show, but it is very what is it like pandering?
A lot of
kind
fan
of in a way
in this episode, because you got to see all the people that you kind of wanted to see in a finale for the series. At the time I thought this was really weird. So I guess we're doing impressions now. But I thought it was really weird that they brought back Denise Crosby, but did not bring back Wesley, especially with the time jump stuff.
Yeah.
They could have.
Yeah, because don't they actually show him in one of the scenes from
you're thinking of something else. I'm shaking my head as if it shows up on a podcast.
I mean, this was such a long episode that
there's
I
some stuff
like
that we glossed
I might
over
have missed
here.
some
like we
things.
never talked about that in the future. Troy dies, and that's kind of a point of contention between Worf. And Riker,
that's what I mean. I think
made a move.
I wonder. They never explain what happens, right? And Riker seems very distraught, so I'm thinking maybe it was something that caused her death, and that's why he plays everything by the book.
It was murder-suicide. Yeah, she couldn't find a man.
Lexana Troy was finally tired that she never got married. And they were both naked when it happened, because that's what you do when you're a Beta Z.
Back to impressions. We've glossed over a bunch of stuff, so hopefully people will watch it and they'll be able to make their own sort of assessments on things. But
it was an interesting way to end it. Like, of course, it's the full circle effect. It started with Q, it ended with Q. It started with the trial, it ended with the trial, but the trial's ongoing, so it's kind of pointless to hold the trial. Humanity starts on trial, and they never end the trial. So then what was the I mean, for me it just seems like it was kind of a pointless plot device.
I think that what they did is they just wanted to book in the series with something that people that people could kind of like say like okay, well this is you know it's like George Lucas says, you know it's like poetry, like it rhymes, like it rhymes.
Like it
rhymes, kind of
like
you know it calls back to those terrible DC Fontana written episodes without being a DC Fontana episode. So, sorry DC Fontana. But
so true.
I know. More
oh my god.
But yeah, I thought it was okay as a series, but honestly, as a fan, I'd kind of already moved on to DS9 by then. Because season 7, but season 7's kind of a stinker, but I think that it's probably one of the stronger episodes in the season. It's the strongest I've seen so far as part of this project. Let's say that. So we'll have to investigate it more.
And if you're gonna watch this along with us, everybody, please start with All Good Things. Don't start with the little documentary that stars Jonathan Frakes, because that is technically the last episode on Netflix.
You do get to
Don't
watch,
start with that documentary.
Jonathan Frakes walk around the set of the Enterprise D wearing like a 90s suit that's got like some serious shoulder pads. So it might be worth it just for laughs, but be sure to start with actual episodes of Star Trek.
Yeah, and it's actual, and I mentioned earlier like a bad composite shot, and there's one specific one that stood out to me because it looks like they were all in 10 forward in the future, right? And Worf is all by himself, and it's obvious it's a green screen because it's like, did they not have him that day?
No,
could they not
busy.
Fit him in, or did they not have the camera shots? They were
Weasel.
like, whatever.
He had a gargoyle
so they had
shoot to get to you.
So it was Worf sitting there with, and Jonathan Frakes in the future had probably one of the worst wigs I've ever seen.
He just for men.
That gray number.
Oh yeah, it was pretty crazy.
He did not.
But he looked very grumpy.
He did. Well, the love of his life died. Yeah, it wasn't. It's like him and Picard switched places. Whereas Picard was like, no, we got to break all the rules to get what I want. And Frakes was like, Riker pretty much turned into
grizzled old man. He lost
Ebenezer Scrooge.
The woman he loved and lost his friend with Worf, and then none of it mattered because it never happened. So, so there you go.
Yeah, it's true.
I know.
It's a big
So wrapping things
Frakes.
up, man. What's coming next? What do we do? What episode's next? Is it Preemptive Strike? Because I'm looking at the guide here and it says that it is.
Then you know what? It's Preemptive
and you know what?
Strike.
I'm gonna love
next.
it because it's a Ensign Rowe episode.
Oh, Ensign Rowe.
Yeah, if you're not a big fan of Michelle Forbes, you will be by the time season 7's done.
Oh,
you will be. Wrong franchise, but we'll work it out. So.
No, that's true. I wonder how they're gonna work with the Force in that episode. I mean, it's just really, I hope Yoda does really well against the Cardassians.
Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Again, I'm Ron McAdams,
and I'm James Rohling, and this has been the inaugural episode of 10 Backward.